Hello, all you patrons. Here we are again with another pre-show.
Oh, yes, the pre-show. And because it's actually being done on Halloween night itself. Oh, scary kids. Our patrons have come in looking like the Mad Monster Party. It is astonishing. The costumes. I thought last week was extraordinary, but this week, you really outdone yourselves. It's amazing.
Indeed. All right, questions. Three questions from John. Dear Charles, are you familiar with the Center for Economic and Social Justice, Michael Greaney, the Capital Homesteading Act, and his blog, justthirdway.blogspot.com? If so, what are your thoughts?
I'm not familiar with it, frankly, and so I don't have any. But the third way, and what it sounds like to me, is something agriculturalist, which I'm always, uh, unless I have reason to be otherwise, I'm always immediately sympathetic. But I really don't know anything about it.
Hmm. Do you agree with McIntyre in Secularization and Moral Change that the main cause of the loss of religion in England was the effects of urbanization and industrialization and the social changes it caused more than anything else? Would you please comment on that concept? Do you think the case is similar for America?
Well, to be honest with you, I think McIntyre was half right in the sense that what he said was certainly played a huge role. However, what he left out was the fact that Christianity, quote unquote, in England was already severely weakened, first by the break with Rome, and then with the shattering into sects uh, under James the First, Charles the First, and during the Civil War. So this broken body of English Christianity was not in a position to resist or to adopt or to do anything when all of the phenomena that McIntyre describes came to pass. Now, having said all that, is America similar? Well, in a lot of ways. We're a Protestant country too, even zanier because we don't even have any real Catholic past, except in certain particular areas, Louisiana, New Mexico, California, and so on. But that really hasn't done us a great deal of good in this sense. So yeah, I certainly see similarities there.
If Father LaGrange is right about mystical theology and that the universal call to holiness means at the same time that every Christian is called to infused contemplation, what does that mean for the church, education, and formation in the church in general?
Well, that's a very good question, and one I am supremely incapable of answering.
What's infused contemplation?
Good question. Infused knowledge is knowledge that's put into your head by baptism. Infused contemplation, I suppose, would be the uh, facility to contemplate the divine without having to work too hard at it. But I don't know. I'm ignorant on this point.
Contemplation, that's mental prayer.
Yes.
Saint Teresa of Avila, in Way of Perfection, states quite clearly that not everyone is called to mental prayer. Like some people just, through no fault of their own, they just can't do it. And, that's fine. You can say the rosary and you can say, prayers, vocal prayers, and think about the prayers that you're saying. That's, I don't know. It's interesting. Okay. Question from Theo, your buddy.
Theo,
He's got a great
who's now
question
locked
here.
down in England.
Oh, yeah. Well, all right. What do you think of Saint Odilo of Cluny's thought that Our Lady's mercy and her nature are so united that when she was assumed into heaven, a physical shock went through the universe and the pains of hell were momentarily suspended, and that in commemoration there is some respite for the damned each year on the Feast of the Assumption?
I don't know.
Yes or no? I mean, we don't pay you to say I don't know.
Okay, you don't know.
Well, if a saint says it, that gives it some weight, doesn't it?
Well, of course it does. Of course it does. But the church has never defined it. It's obviously a pious belief, so you can believe it if you like.
It is very reminiscent of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux's statement about the Assumption, where sort of when the angel Gabriel, asked her that all of nature held its breath and kind of stood waiting for the let it be done to me according to thy will.
You mean the Immaculate Conception? No, I mean the Annunciation. My mind's going.
Yeah.
The Annunciation. The Annunciation. It's Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to be kind to me. Unlike some people.
He's all stuffed with candy corn.
Oh, this is about candy corn.
Yeah, it's about candy corn. You can't think straight. You're high on candy corn.
You're making this about the fact that I just gobbled a bunch of candy corn in front of you, and you don't have any.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, did it ever occur to you, sitting high and mighty in your penthouse suite high atop the Tumbler House Tower, that if you had planned better and thought better, you would have had stocks of candy corn laid in? But no, you didn't. Whereas I, a poor, almost mendicant, had the presence of mind to go to a store a week before Halloween, knowing that there wouldn't be any left any sooner, and getting some candy corn in Vienna. And I got my candy corn. And now you resent that fact. Well, how do I put this nicely? If candy corn had meant all that much to you when you were directing the lockdown procedures for Tumbler House, then you would have gotten yourself candy corn. Sure, that was back in the spring. But a real leader looks ahead to real needs. And you would have said, what if we're still stuck in here as late as Halloween? I probably should lay in candy corn. But that never occurred to you, did it? And now, because I had the presence of mind to come buy some candy corn, I'm the bad guy.
Wait, I think I must have misheard you, because what you said doesn't make sense. So you're saying that a real leader would have planned ahead in order to satisfy his own appetites.
To satisfy everyone's appetite, you would have had tons of candy corn in there, and everybody in the tower right now would be shoveling the stuff down their gullets as fast as they could. But that never even occurred to you.
I don't feel like that's a responsible course of action.
Well, all right, then maybe you're right, but then you can't complain about it and say, "Oh well, I'm suffering because I'm such a good person."
I am just trying to create an awareness against candy corn abuse. Okay, because some people, let's enjoy responsibly, shall we?
Enjoy candy corn responsibly?
Yeah.
Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm tempted to do right now?
What are you tempted to do?
I'm tempted to run into the next room and grab the bowl with the last remnants of candy corn and pop a couple right here so everyone can see.
That would be mean-spirited.
Mean-spirited? I would be sharing my joy with all of our patrons. How would that be mean-spirited? How is sharing joy a bad thing?
It's flaunting.
Flaunting? Flaunting.
Oh, if you've got it, flaunt it, right?
Well, that's what your Uncle Giovanni always told me. And I'll tell you what, if he were here instead of me, he would be dangling the candy corn like this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at all the candy corn, little Vincenzo. All for me, none for you. You know that's true.
All right, next question. from
Okay,
from Jacob.
Jacob.
Mr. Coulombe, I have two questions that I would implore you to answer. What would the map and atmosphere of Europe look like if President Wilson did not have such an influence on deposing the monarchs of Central Europe? For example, what would have been the fate of Poland, Germany, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire?
Well, my crystal ball is a little cloudy. I didn't bring my tarot cards to the United States. This says tea had a bag, not leaves. So my usual methods of dividing alternate futures are not with us. But I presume, I would guess, I suppose, that France would have gotten Alsace-Lorraine back. Belgium would have been deoccupied. Serbia would have gotten some sort of means to the sea, maybe through Albania, maybe gobbling up Montenegro. Poland would have been recreated out of the Austrian, Russian, and Prussian fragments. That's what probably would have happened.
Did you see the news with Poland? Well, actually, you did because I showed you it. But how do you like that? Judges.
Judges.
We need to get some of those judges.
Yeah, we should. And of course, the rioting has been huge.
They said tens of thousands. You know, and as I told you, I wish the New York Times and all these liberal media outlets would likewise cover the March for Life with the same, as loudly, right?
Well, no, see, if they did that, it would imply that there wasn't unanimity on the issue.
I see.
Right thinking everywhere have precisely the same pea brains as the New York Times and CNN. When you realize that the only good people are the stupid ones, it'll all make sense. Put this another way, if you're smart, you're evil. Ask CNN and the New York Times.
Yeah, Don Lemon, he was, Tucker Carlson was talking about him, how Don Lemon was saying how he had to let a lot of his conservative friends go.
I bet they were relieved.
Yeah. Anyhow, all right, so, okay. We have a bunch of questions from Matthew.
Okay.
Since becoming Catholic, I've been very concerned that the West is crumbling and will not last a great deal longer, because there isn't really a solid, holistic, reigning philosophical religion. I wondered, what are Charles's and Vinny's thoughts on what might take over the West fairly soon? Is Islam a real possibility, or is Islam just far too divided to make this work, or does the Catholic Church have a real chance?
Well, it's not just divided. I mean, Islam has certain, shall we say, internal contradictions that sooner or later always pop up throughout its history. I believe that the church will pull itself out of the current despond sooner or later. As soon as those churchmen who matter, those clerics, the 20% or so, 10% of any organization who really make the decisions regardless of their titles, or whether they have any, when that segment of the clergy realizes that the church has no reason to exist other than the salvation of souls, then things will begin to turn around. And that may come a lot sooner than we think.
I think so. I think one of the differences between the older generation and the younger generation is, the older generation has a lot of apathy when it comes to transferring the faith, practicing the faith. You know, they were quite content to just dump off, their children in the hands of strangers who basically turned everyone away from the faith, and that was fine. But now you don't have that anymore, really. Now everybody is smartened up. And
the younger people have. The old dogs in charge are still old dogs.
And you kind of see that with everyone's reaction to, I guess, the hierarchy in general.
Yeah.
We're not just, everything's good anymore. Like, you can do anything and, everything's fine. We don't really care. There's a great deal of scrutiny and criticism now. And I guess you could say that's a step in the right direction because, it shows that we care now.
Yeah,
That,
I think so.
it's not simply pray, pay, and obey.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think that, and I also think that as Islam in Europe and various other things, factors get wilder and wilder, that too will have an effect on reviving the faith. I mean, let's face it, there wouldn't have been a Council of Trent without the sack of Rome in 1527.
And the read a little bit of Father Ripperger's Principle of the Integral Good. It's very deep. I didn't absorb most of it, but the one thing that I absorbed was that evil basically dies off. Evil basically kills itself. There's not anything that can be pure evil, because that would just kill itself. The extent to something exists is the extent that it is good. And I think you can apply that especially to societies. Like, the more evil a society becomes, the quicker it kills itself, the quicker it destroys itself.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good fruit with the Catholic laity, and there's a lot of good fruit blossoming, and so I think that will continue to grow, and the rest of society will continue to rot.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going to play out, but
It'll turn around, unless, of course, these are the last times, which is always a possibility at any given moment. I don't think so, but if they are, they are. We'll find out. I wouldn't worry too much. As we've said on this program repeatedly, whether or not the end of the world comes in your time, the end of your world is going to come.
Yeah.
And if you're ready to die, then everything else is fine.
Yeah, I've said that a bunch of times because, as I've said before, I've known so many old-timey Catholics who have come and gone, who were so bound up in prophecy, and they never saw it. They never saw what they were always speculating about, and you wonder, I don't know. I guess there are worse things to be into.
Yep, always.
All right.
What else we got?
A few weeks ago, I asked Charles a question, which he answered very briefly. I suspect because I wasn't a Patreon. As a Patreon now, I'll ask again and see if Charles would like to elaborate more on this question, since I think it's a very important one, and I am guessing Charles has more to say on the matter.
Oh, maybe. What's the matter? We'll find out.
If there is a Vatican III, or another ecumenical council of the church, or even another ex-cathedra statement from the pontiff, what should be the issues dealt with?
Well, several things. Firstly, the nature of the church, the necessity of salvation, the necessity of the church. That's something that has to be addressed. I mean, if anything was made clear by the COVID the COVID adventure, it was the truth of what Benedict XVI said back in 2016, that the majority of Catholics, certainly of Catholic clerics, are universalists and don't really believe in the necessity of church and sacraments for salvation. Well, when you believe that, everything eventually goes out the window, and nothing is necessary, nothing's important. So that's why you can tell your flock, well, just make a perfect act of contrition and a spiritual act of communion, and you're good to go. Well, all right. Bye-bye. No more priest. That's something that has to be addressed. The relationship of the church and the state, which at the moment is the relationship between Rotary and state, YMCA and state. Again, the COVID crisis has shown that the state does not recognize the church as an equal partner, but as a mere voluntary organization that is really no different in kind than a group of automobile fanciers.
Well, the state is now professedly materialist.
Yeah.
Philosophically.
And dealing with a materialist government like that, that's another thing that such a council has to deal with, and how to deal with Catholic minions of that regime. So.
Okay. Yeah. Another question from Matthew. I would like to hear how Charles navigates his way through Vatican II as an ecumenical council of the Catholic Church. I understand that Charles's view of Vatican II isn't the most positive, but surely as Catholics we have to respect that it was a general council of the Holy Catholic Church, and therefore that it was of the Holy Spirit, as I think the council's fathers said repeatedly in the documents.
How do I navigate my way through it? I guess like this. No, well, firstly, there's several things you got to bear in mind. Yes, of course, it was an ecumenical council. And yes, the Holy Ghost was present there. But by the same token, both John the 23rd in opening it and Paul the 6th in closing it made it very clear that they were not invoking infallibility. So, in what way could you maintain that the Holy Ghost was present and that it was an ecumenical council? I would say offhand, the very fact that the council did not attempt to define anything or to definitively address anything. It appeared to, but it didn't really. As Hubert Genin said, the great historian of the council, he said, not of the Second Council, of councils in general. When the council was called and people were curious as to what it might be about, he said, well, the biggest theological issue today is the nature of the church, and the biggest pastoral issue is communism. Surely the council will deal with those two. It didn't deal with either one. And the need to do so has not gone away. I mean, I think that eventually Vatican II will be forgotten the way Constantinople II was.
To me, after reading the Vatican II documents, the problems with Vatican II, to me, are embodied with one of the sentences I read, which stated that Christ is present in the priest, but especially present in the Eucharist. Now, that statement is factually correct, right? Yeah, okay. But at the same time, you can play games with that. That's a poorly worded sentence right there. Now, it was a more complicated sense, but I've simplified that. But that was basically what was expressed in this sense. So you leave it to everyone where it's like, okay, Christ is present in both the Eucharist and the priest. So it's like you weigh that, but then you weigh especially in the Eucharist. You know, you have a counterbalance there. And you leave it to everyone to sort of figure it out.
Yeah.
And everybody went sort of the other way in terms of emphasizing Christ is present in each and every one of us, to the exclusion of the focus of focusing on Christ present in the Eucharist.
Well, that's quite true. And of course, there's also the fact that the areas in which Benedict XVI said that the council had altered teaching, church teaching, he said were not areas that were in and of themselves infallible. But of course, if that's true, then the changes to those teachings aren't infallible either. And then you take the whole question down from whether or not it's valid and protected by the Holy Ghost down to which is factually true, which actually corresponds with facts and which doesn't. Now, the other thing, frankly, is that Vatican II was used as the battering ram for a lot of things, which, to be fair, a lot of it was certainly nowhere in the council itself, but it was used to bring in altar girls and all sorts of other things, which it didn't have to be. Manifestly, none of that stuff was in there. Nevertheless, the spirit of the council was what was used to wreck everything.
Okay. And
someone said that Vatican II was the only example you'd ever heard of the spirit killing the letter.
And I'd like someone to actually define what people of God means.
You are demanding. You know what I always wanted? Whenever John Paul II would talk about the many benefits of Vatican II, I wanted him to enumerate them. Give us a list.
Because to me,
he never did.
To me, people of God seems like. Are we saying the church? Is it the church? Is it not the church?
Don't know.
Who are these people? Is it the entire world? We can say that. I don't know. Who are the people of God? I don't know.
Everybody and nobody.
There's just so many. It's not wrong. It's not heretical per se. It's just like, what is this?
It's ambiguous. It's ambiguous.
Oh man.
All right.
I don't like talking about Vatican II because everyone just plays games. And
no, it's true.
I don't like playing those games.
Me neither.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, we have a nice comment from him at the end that I just like to read for everybody. I'd like to particularly thank the show and Charles for helping me to become Catholic. This show was the first experience I ever had of properly educated Catholicism, and it was very impressive. I watched a YouTube video on Orthodox Catholic reunion, and it really stuck with me. At the time, I was passionately seeking to become Greek Orthodox. It didn't take long before I was sold on the papacy and knew I had to become Catholic. I eventually joined the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church because of my love for the Byzantine Rite. That's wonderful, Matthew. It's good to hear.
We much appreciate it. And it also occurs to me that there's something else I should mention to you about the council. There was a theologian named John Lamont, and he, during the time when Benedict was Pope and the SSPX were negotiating very intently about Vatican II, what they could accept, what they couldn't, Lamont made the point that the SSPX accept 80% of Vatican II. They reject 20%. That being that precisely those areas that Benedict said were debatable. Now, Lamont turned around and said, the problem is not really that the SSPX reject 20% of Vatican II. The problem is that so many bishops and seminary heads and religious superiors accept the 20% and reject the 80%. Food for thought.
Okay.
All right. Well, that'll do it. Folks, don't leave the studio. As soon as we're off the air, a couple of little munchkins will come in and bring you trick-or-treat candies for your baskets.
All right, so, excellent.
Stay seated, be patient for the real show, and just relax. And again, lovely, lovely costumes. Thank you so much.
All right. Stay tuned.
See you soon.